TellyCast, the TV industry news review.
Hi, I'm Justin Crosby, and welcome to another TellyCast. This week, we have a special show from our very own TellyCast Digital Content Forum, sponsored by BBC Studios. During a sold-out day of discussion and debate with the industry's digital-first leaders, Andy Fry caught up with ITVX's Craig Morris, UTA's Sam Glynn, Taff Makopa from Wall of Entertainment, the Battersea Poltergeist creator Danny Robbins, and Ash Greenwood from Pinterest. It's coming right up on this week's Digital Content Forum special.
I'm with Craig Morris from ITVX. We're here at the TellyCast Digital Content Forum, the first event of its kind. Craig, tell me a little bit about you and your role at ITV. Tell me your title specifically and the kind of things that you're working on.
I'm managing editor of ITVX, and for the last sort of year or so I've been overseeing the streaming services at ITV. So formerly it was ITV Hub and BritBox, and my background the last few years was BritBox actually in the UK, not internationally. BritBox has been pretty successful, you know, with mostly owned by ITV with a bit of interest from the BBC, got up to a really healthy subscriber level. But I think it's fair to say, whilst we were working on BritBox, ITV Hub was sitting there as a pretty okay catch-up service, but wasn't really known for much more. So what we've been working on this year and what we're launching literally over the next week or two is this new streaming service, ITVX, which aims to be sort of all that we've done in the past at ITV Hub, Hub Plus, BritBox, but so much more, particularly in the free space. Particularly, we want to feel like a premium streaming service. The cornerstone is still going to be live because it's what ITV does brilliantly. It's what brings millions of people into our streaming apps every year. But we want to build on that with loads of films, great box sets, great archive, but also we're releasing new exclusives every week. And we've got loads of fast channels as well, these free ad-supported TV channels. So we can spin these up. We'll be launching with 20 of them. So basically supersizing the content offer, big exclusive content every week, which is exclusive and new. No one else is doing that really on the scale we're doing it in the UK for free, because this is premium telly with ads. And so we've been building towards the launch, which is on the 8th of December, when we'll have a whole load of shows launching. And then every week from then on, there'll be exclusive new TV shows launching.
I think, you put your finger on it. The most interesting aspect of it is that it's premium content for free, which kind of goes against the grain of what we've known for a couple of years with, Disney Plus and Paramount and Netflix and so on in the market. How viable is that as a model? I mean, what makes it viable, for you to be able to bring big shows to an audience for free?
Well, the ITV has had a very healthy 60-year career showing programmes and putting ads in the middle and making good amounts of money doing that. But we all know that obviously linear is still in pretty rude health. Just look at the size of the audiences coming into the World Cup or I'm a Celebrity on ITV. And I think the advertisers are very happy and the commercial team are doing very well. But we do know that there are more and more eyeballs in digital and moving towards streaming. Why wouldn't we put some brand new content out there for free in AVOD and monetize that with ads, just as we always have done in linear? Good content is good content at the end of the day. And so I think we're quite excited about the model, because I think you almost have to be a company the size of ITV with, we've got our own studios division with the amount of content and creatives and studios to actually really make a play like this work, because I think you can't do it in half measures. So we're very ambitious and we've got great content, and the belief is there that people will come and view that content on our streaming service and they'll see the ads, and obviously that will sort of help us, if you like, migrate more and more people into digital and grow our digital revenues. And that's all about future-proofing the company.
In the session you did talk a little bit about some of the titles that are going to be available from December the 8th. Tell us now, just what kind of shows you've got coming through.
Well, the whole idea is really we're trying to do programmes that have ambition and maybe serve a slightly different audience to the linear channels, because the linear channels still have their schedules and their amazing commissions, and they'll keep pushing out new shows as well. But for us, there are sort of certain audiences we'd love to get in, upmarket audiences. So the sort of shows we're launching with A Spy Among Friends, which is Damian Lewis, Guy Pearce, Cold War tale based on the real life spy Kim Philby at one end of the scale. But also for younger audiences, we've got Tell Me Everything, which is a teen drama, and the kind of drama that ITV might have struggled to place on the linear network. We're doing comedy as well. We've got a feature-length movie of Plebs. Plebs on linear TV was a half-hour sitcom. You can do a lot more in a 90-minute movie. We can send them to war and have epic battle scenes. And it's a beautifully made piece of comedy that's also quite poignant as well. We're doing period drama, but it's very much period drama with a twist. It's not your average period drama you'd maybe see on linear at 9 p.m. on a Sunday night. It's called The Confessions of Franny Langton. Other examples, we've got Vicky McClure in a gritty contemporary thriller called Without Sin. We've got Stephen Fry doing natural history for ITV. This isn't something ITV's traditionally done. You wonder where would ITV place that in a linear schedule. But Stephen Fry's in and doing A Year on Planet Earth, and it's from the producers of many of the recent sort of big natural history epics that have run on other channels. So it's a good example of how we're getting into new territory. We've got comedy. We've got a comedy called Count Abdullah about a junior doctor who gets bitten by a vampire. We've also got a comedy chronicling the early days of Alan Carr as a kid. His dad was a football manager and wanted him to play football. Alan was a bit more interested in Angela Lansbury and Murder, She Wrote. That's called Changing Ends. So, all of that, plus Russell T Davies doing a beautiful biopic called Nolly about one of ITV's biggest stars back in the day, Noel Gordon, who starred in a soap called Crossroads. Helena Bonham Carter is starring as Nolly. And we've got Mark Gatiss in as well, playing Larry Grayson in that. So what you'll see is a real mix of content for different audiences, but all distinctly a bit different, and maybe not the kind of thing you'd expect to see at tea time or at 9 p.m. on ITV. And so we're quite excited about that. And the whole point is we're going to release new content. There'll be feature-length documentaries, all kinds of things every single week through the year for our audience, which is quite exciting.
So how do you access ITVX? Do you have to go in and sign up? What's the kind of process for becoming a viewer?
Well, the great thing is, there's a small amount of sign up because we want to know sort of where you are, because long term we'd like to target you in terms of your regionality and where you're watching us. But genuinely, it's an AVOD service. It's free. So you don't, have to sit there and put your bank details in and sign your life away. And the good news is so many people already have ITV Hub because, across an average year, a lot of people are coming in for a rugby match or a football match or to watch Love Island or I'm a Celebrity or the soaps or the news or all the other things that ITV does brilliantly. So the good news is that Hub will just, when you auto-update apps or update your app, or it will just automatically push to your TV, it will just change from what was Hub will become ITVX with very little viewer intervention needed. So we're going to make it as easy as possible for people to get ITVX. So you shouldn't have to hunt us down. It should be there on your TV, on your device, on your mobile.
And you made this interesting point in the session about how people do tend to dip in and out of ITV Hub. They watch one thing and go away, but the ambition now is to hold them in, make them more loyal, isn't it?
Yeah, there's two audiences at ITV. There's a very loyal audience, very important audience to us, who come in very regularly because they love the crime dramas and they love the Saturday night entertainment and the news and the soaps, and that's brilliant. That's great. And they're gonna love what we've got on ITVX because we're doing all of that and more. But crucially, what you can do with a streaming service is maybe appeal to those people who come in and then leave straight after the football match, or only come in and watch Love Island and then leave. And we've really looked at that audience. Believe it or not, there's more than 20 million of them who come into ITV across the year, and they might watch an event drama with David Tennant, or they might watch I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. But sort of once they're in, there's nothing else in the past on the app to interest them. And going forward with ITVX, we've got deep box sets of such a range of classic shows. So iconic ITV stuff like Broadchurch or Footballers' Wives, a bit of a guilty pleasure. But at the other end of the scale, we'll be giving people top flight comedy from the US and also some great drama from the US. So great box sets like Smallville or Arrow or Vampire Diaries or The OC or One Tree Hill. And the great thing is, and we did a little test during Love Island in the summer when we tried some of this US box set material out. And what was interesting is people came in, and for the first time they came into Hub, they were watching Love Island, and they went, hang on, they've got One Tree Hill, they've got Heart of Dixie. I might watch that. And of course, these have hundreds of episodes. So once they start watching it, they're actually coming back to you a lot more. They're coming back every day, every week, every month. And it's turning those occasional people who turn up and come to ITV into sort of, if you like, more loyal viewers and coming back more regularly.
Yeah, I was surprised when I saw the Warner deal with those big shows, Arrow and so on, as you mentioned. I mean, I kind of half imagined that they would all end up on HBO Max or whatever Warner decides to call it one day. But it is a sign of your ambition in acquisitions as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, we're commissioning new TV. Yes, we're going to put a lot of classic shows out there. ITV's always worked with the big US studios. We show the big movies. We've bought great series through the years. But yeah, we've been able to go back to them and go, look, what have you got? And in two areas, classic US box sets, we were quite surprised at what's out there and what's available. And as you say, getting some of the DC universe, I mean, Arrow has never been on free-to-air TV. It's only been available in Sky Home. So there's a huge audience who've never seen it. But we've got Gotham, we've got Smallville. And as I say, we've got more and more. And going into next year, you're going to see a lot of iconic US comedy as well as drama. And look, the studios have got their business plans. A lot of them have got their own streamers. But interestingly, they're all engaging. They're all interested still in licensing content and putting their content out there. And there seems to be enough to go around. But I'm particularly excited in it because it just gives you another flavour. We've got the best of British and the best of the US as well.
One thing I'm not clear about, my family, we're subscribers to BritBox, and that's largely because my wife hates advertising and doesn't ever want to see it. But will the originals that sit on ITVX be available ad-free on BritBox as well?
Okay, that's a good question. So the answer is BritBox is sort of now going to be available in two places. So if you're an existing BritBox subscriber and you've got the BritBox app, or you go to BritBox on Amazon channels, it's there, okay? What you're not going to see on those apps is the ITVX exclusives because they're ITVX shows, not really BritBox shows. However, this is the hack. Within ITVX, if you want to watch all our content with ads, it's all there for free. There is ITVX Premium. It's there now. And the great thing about ITVX Premium is if you want to watch all the ITVX content without ads, you subscribe, become a premium subscriber, you actually do get BritBox as well within ITVX. So it's, if you like, an added bonus if you're a premium subscriber. So the good news for your wife and you and your family is that what you'll be able to do is basically you can subscribe to BritBox through ITVX and you get all the benefit of ITVX. You'll see everything without the ads, but you'll also get the best of the BBC, Channel 4, Channel 5 as well.
You talked in a session about the World Cup, it being an interesting time to be launching in the middle of the World Cup. But it's also an interesting time in terms of the economics of this business. I mean, there are people, Lionsgate pulling streamers out of markets and AMC 20% cuts in their business, and it just goes on and on and on. I mean, you're going to have to be brave, aren't you? You're going to have to really kind of stick at it and be brave because it seems to be a tough market at the moment.
Yeah, I can understand that, and I think that's fair. I think it's worth remembering that what we're doing first and foremost here is going out there with a free streaming service, and in a way, if times are quite tough, that's a great product to have out there in the market. As I say, if people do want to pay and subscribe to the premium tier, they can, but crucially, all our exclusives, all our new shows, all those great box sets, all the movies, we've got there'll be over 1,000 movies coming in and out during the first year. All of that's available for free, and it'll have ads in it. And I think that there is a market out there for that because actually no one else is doing it on the scale we are. So if you think about it, we genuinely are releasing more new free content than any other streaming service because generally people expect to have to pay a streaming service to deliver their originals or exclusives. In our case, it's out there for free. And I think, you could argue the BBC, Channel 4 are out there with free streaming products. BBC, I suppose, technically not free because there's a license fee, but it's worth saying they're generally linked to their linear products. So if a new series is starting, you might get the box set. Well, we'll be doing that too. And there's a new series on ITV, a big new thriller. We'll most likely box set that on ITVX. But crucially, no one is out there releasing new exclusives every week for free. So I think our business model is probably a little different.
And you're right, because even Netflix and Disney, as they come into the ad market, are still charging money, aren't they? They're still...
That's it, yeah. And I think that's it. When
£3
you,
or £4,
yeah, exactly. You hear that these streaming services are adding advertising in. That doesn't mean they're going to make the content free.
Yeah.
They're basically using it, obviously, to get you in at a slightly lower price point, but they still need money from you each month. And that's where what we're doing is a little bit different.
Yeah. One area I do want to talk to you about for a few minutes is the fast channels. That seems to be a really interesting aspect of what you're doing. So you have 20 fast channels. What are they? Are they all based around ITV IP?
Yeah, it's a real mixture. I mean, it's worth saying, look, live is still the cornerstone of what we do. We're a streaming service, not a VOD service. So whilst VOD is a big part of it and having a great library of TV and film, live events, whether it's from the main channels or just on ITVX, is an important part of what we'll be doing. And the fast channels supplement that. So I can give you live examples. We've got a World Cup Classics channel, which is doing incredibly well because guess what? We're scheduling it just under ITV. And when people come in for a football match, in the half hour, 15 minutes they've come in before the match, they've noticed it and gone, oh, hang on, England, Argentina, I remember that match. They go and watch it for 20 minutes while they're waiting for the game to start, and then they come across, watch the game. And interestingly, a lot of them are going back in afterwards to watch some more classic games because they want to see England lift the World Cup in 1966 in colour. And that's one example. But, you know, audiences coming in for Love Island in January will see the Love Island channel or Love Island International. In answer to your original question, there are two approaches. One is a sort of themed channel, you know, crime drama, ITV classics, comedy, true crime is another one. But then other side of the coin is single IP, big brands. It could be Hell's Kitchen. It could be Midsummer Murders. It could be Love Island. It could be Towie. These are all shows that you can access 24/7 on their own channels. Or if you're into a particular genre, then you can just dip into that channel. And there is a need state, I think, if you want to call it that, for these channels, which is, I think people are getting sometimes, particularly with the streamers, analysis paralysis, the doom scrolling, I'm just going to scroll down, and you start to realise you're spending more time looking for something to watch than watching something. Yeah. Now, listen, if you're a true crime fan and you want to do the ironing on a Sunday afternoon, sometimes it's just easier to go, there's a true crime channel. Don't really care what true crime doc it is, just play me some true crime, and you land on it, and it sort of makes the decisions for you. And sometimes you need that. Other times you'll want to go and hunt for some gems to watch.
So how would you say your fast approach is comparable to what Pluto or Roku or Samsung are doing? I mean, they're getting up into the hundreds in terms of channels. Do you see yourselves kind of having a much bigger portfolio? Is that, or?
Well, everything about what we're doing, one of the exciting things about starting a new streaming service is it's very data-led. So we'll be keeping an eye on the data and everything we do and working out what's working and what people want more of or less of. And the same will apply to the channels. So some of the channels will be topical. You know, the World Cup Classics channel will be there for the World Cup and then go. The Christmas movies channel is there at the moment. That will go. So sometimes we'll be replacing channels because they're topical. Other times we'll replace them because maybe we've noticed that, viewing's gone down and people aren't interested in it anymore, so we'll move on to the next thing. So in answer to your question, whilst there's no cap on the channels, my only concern with going to hundreds of channels is we're ITV, and actually our fast channels have really good quality content on them. There's a sort of quality threshold there. And so I think we would only add more channels where we feel it adds value and choice for the viewers. But I can't see us anytime soon getting into the hundreds of channels, because I think I'd worry about the quality bar dipping a bit. But, never say never. I think as our app products become more personalized, you might want to put more channels in there so we can tailor people with the channels that suit them. But we'll start with 20. We will gradually scale up, but I don't think we see ourselves as getting into the hundreds of channels at this stage.
And the third-party channel, I mean, I know Banijay and Fremantle and so on are out there launching their own channels. And obviously, off the top of my head, I can't think of the right scenarios particularly, but those kind of partners, could you imagine bringing those into it? Or is this going to be purely about you having fast channels that draw on your own content?
That's a really important point, actually, because we're very lucky that we've got ITV Studios and some brilliant IP and some brilliant programs. And of course, we can work together and give people that. But actually, no, the exciting thing about ITVX is we are developing content partnerships. So the example I gave today, actually, in the session was anime. Look, this is all about ITV serving new audiences that we've maybe underserved in the past. Anime has a very distinct audience, and there is a lot of anime out there for free. And we partnered with this brilliant company called Anime Limited, who have some of the best anime out there, titles like Cowboy Bebop. And we've been able to bring that in. And basically, because we're a commercial company and we sell the advertising, we can share the revenue. So they share in the success, as do we. And it's another sort of business model. In the past, companies have written a check and licensed the content, and that's that. In the new world, we can look at something and go, right, well, I think this will work, but I'm not sure. But look, here's a content provider. Why don't we just buddy up with them, get the content out there, and we'll share the revenue. So no, we will expand that, I'm sure, in the months and years to come, which is look at those companies that are holding content and want to partner up with us and share in the success.
Brilliant. Final question. So I don't know how much of the day you were here for, but I mean, have you enjoyed your time at the forum?
Yeah, I mean, I have. Sadly, I couldn't make the whole day, but I tell you what's exciting is, there's no other events quite like this, focusing and zoning in on this area, and yet it's the future. It's the future of TV. And so I think I can see this event expanding and growing in the years to come, because these are the conversations we should be having. What are we doing now? Because, the digital revolution has already happened. It's not some future thing, We're not all particularly looking into the future. We're talking about the here and now. But I think as an industry, we've got to debate and talk about, content, how we get it to people, the different models, how we work with content creators, how we expand this area, and crucially work together. I think you need a spirit of collaboration a little bit to just push this forward, because, this is the future, but we're kind of already in it now. And I can't think of another event that focuses and sort of laser focuses in on this area. So, for instance, today it was great to be on a panel just talking about AVOD originals, because, as you say, premium streaming, SVODs, they've dominated the conversation. I think sometimes people have overlooked the power of AVOD and ad-funded VOD and streaming services and short-form content, long-form content, and the opportunities they are in that free space.
Brilliant. Well, Craig, thank you very much for your time, and good luck with next week's launch.
Thank you very much.
I'm here with Sam Glynn from UTA, and we're at the TellyCast Digital Content Forum. And you've just come off a session talking about branded content. So before we get into that, Sam, tell me a little bit about your job at UTA. What is it you do?
I am heading up EMEA for the Entertainment and Culture Marketing Division of UTA. So if you're wondering what that is, it's a division that basically inserts brands into culture and entertainment. So imagine the intersection of entertainment, culture, technology and commerce, and imagine you're a brand and you're plonked right in the middle of it. So that means you are going to appear as a brand in television shows, in documentaries, in movies, on podcasts, in Web3, as a piece of fine art, as a piece of literature. It doesn't really matter, but it's wherever interesting cultural things are happening, you're going to have a presence. I always compare it to, imagine if you were an A-list talent, but actually you're a brand. And UTA is going to curate your career in the same way they would if you're an actor.
Okay, that's an interesting comparison. So although we were in a session talking about brands and social content, actually you're talking about working with brands across a whole series of different areas. So social content would just be one string for you.
Absolutely. And that's why I moved to UTA, the excitement of having this huge platform with so many different opportunities. And, UTA's got 2,000 agents. And the amazing thing about that is they all have knowledge about what's happening in the industry. So if you are creating a new TV show and you're looking for a production designer or a director or a producer or a writer or an actor, the likelihood is you would have called UTA somewhere in the process. So UTA have a log of every single project happening in the cultural universe, which gives me this fantastic archive to access. So, you're a brand and you say to me, I want to be in a show where people drink fizzy drinks. Then I can go through that log of every single cultural entity and say, okay, X, Y, Z, how can we introduce you to the producers, the writers, the set designers, the prop masters, and make sure that you appear in a relevant way in the show.
Because, you made the point in the session, didn't you, that data kind of sits at the heart of this. So you're sitting there with that big bank of data about UTA, and I guess social media is also very data-driven, isn't it? So it's kind of an interesting match, really.
But they also have another department called UTA IQ, and that department aggregates a number of different social tools, plus their bespoke tools, to really dig deeply into the social impact that talent and brands and IP and platforms have. And then they manage to marry them in a kind of symbiotic way that makes sense for whatever entity they're representing.
Yeah. I know it's early days for you. You've only been there a few months, but have you got any examples, any brands you've been working with, or is that a bit under wraps at the moment?
Well, I've been working with a lot of the US brands. So one of the brands that I absolutely love there is a brand called Lyft. So it's a rideshare app, and they brought UTA on several years ago when ride sharing was not normal. And it was a bit weird to get to a car with a complete stranger and drive off into the distance. So the brief to UTA was, how can you use entertainment and culture to normalise ride sharing? So as part of that, what they did, they gifted a lot of writers' rooms with Lyft credits. So that when they're creating a new TV series or a movie, at top of mind was Lyft. So if you actually, next time you're sitting down and watching Netflix or Amazon Prime, listen out how many people say, oh, I'm just going to grab a lift, or go get yourself a lift. It became normalised in popular culture.
So it wasn't actually about being too pushy. It was simply about presenting the opportunity to people and letting them go with it themselves.
Well, everyone takes a car.
Yeah.
Every non-scripted and scripted show has a journey in it. So it's a really organic product to put into entertainment. So that to me is a lovely example of how entertainment and cultural marketing can work very well.
Yeah. So you were on the session with Laura Marks from Channel 4 and Matt Ford from Cowshed. Were there any insights that you got during the session? Anything that kind of came up in the session that you found particularly interesting?
Yeah, well, I mean, I love what Cowshed are doing. I think it's fascinating, and I think, they're such a young company, and they're really starting to corner what's happening in branding and social and marrying those two universes. I suspect in the near future they'll start developing their own e-commerce products. Channel 4, again, a traditional mainstream broadcaster, and I was just talking to Laura and hearing how much the team has grown from day one, and I think there's now more than 120 people. So you're seeing a linear broadcaster diversify to bring in new audiences and to give brands yet another content platform to distribute themselves on.
Yeah, and another interesting angle you brought up was this issue of transactions, wasn't it? Of kind of connecting the branding process to the transactions. And I know the other guys were saying that they don't measure their campaigns through sales uplift, but there is, as you say, an opportunity, isn't there, to kind of encourage people to click straight through to e-commerce?
I think that will happen more and more. It's not in my jurisdiction, it's down to the platform, so you're completely dependent on whatever the particular platform is doing, and as we know, TikTok is very active in this space, and I'm sure other platforms will follow suit.
Yeah. And there was this kind of conversation around the distinction between doing an AFP or branded content for TV and doing it for social. Do you see a lot of difference when you kind of go into those two areas? Does it feel very different? Does it feel as though brands have more freedom in social?
Well, there's always compliance, which is quite restrictive, especially in the UK. But I think a lot of it is, as we discussed, it's about when a brand has a purpose and a story to tell, then it makes sense for them to do something a little bit more long form, like an AFP. When it's a product and you're creating some buzz and fun around the product, like a pair of shoes or a fashion item, then short form is sometimes the better option.
Yeah. And I think, last question, I think I've seen you around all day at the other sessions. How have you found it as an event? Have you found it like a useful event to attend?
I love this event. I think Dustin creates it really, really well. I think the guests are interesting, insightful. They're not just bragging about their own companies, they're talking about relevant current topics. A lot of people know each other. I always say that the worlds of branded and digital are like the kind of bastard siblings of main television. And we all know each other, know of each other, haven't seen each other for a couple of years over COVID. So the atmosphere of collaboration and learning is really, really positive.
Yeah. Where were you before? What were you doing immediately
Fremantle.
before? Oh, Fremantle. Okay. And what kind of role did you have there?
So I ran brand entertainment globally for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
And thanks for your time. So we're here at the Digital Content Forum.
Yes,
with
we are.
Taff Makopa
That's
of
me.
Wall of Entertainment.
Yes.
So for people who don't know what you're about, tell us a bit about Wall of Entertainment.
Wall of Entertainment is a digital first production company now, formerly known as Waller Comedy. So we're digital first content creators, and we serve a diverse youth audience. That's our speciality, and that's what we do. So we've got different branches in our business. So we've got the Waller Productions, which is our production arm. We've got a Waller Comedy, which is our distribution platform. And we have Waller Talent, which is our talent management and talent network. So yeah, so that's who we are.
So tell us about, I mean, you've had massive growth, massive
Yes.
success since you launched. What's
Yes.
that about? Why do you think you've kind of captured the imagination?
I think it's the magic. We bring a different, authentic voice to content, and we approach content in a way that not many people have managed to. And I think for us, it's been staying true to us, serving our audience, prioritizing our audience, and making sure that everything that we do is of that standard. And that consistency as well across the board.
Yeah.
That's what's been the main drivers for our success.
I know a young audience knows social very well, but for
Yeah.
a TV audience,
Yeah.
who are maybe used to half-hour formats or hour
Yeah.
formats, episodic TV,
Yeah.
tell us about the kind of content you produce. What would a show look like on your platform?
Because we work with multiple different platforms, so shows will look completely different. But for us, we worry less about how long it is and worry more about the pace of the show. So, like, for example, one of our biggest shows is a show called Does This Shoe Fit, which we do with Foot Asylum. That series, episode-wise, you can have an episode that's 10 minutes, an episode that's 22 minutes. So it varies based on the content. So we put content first, and then time will be something that it work itself out when it comes to time. But we make sure that if it's a 10-minute episode, it's the best 10 minutes you can get. If it's 22 minutes, it's the best 22 minutes we can get.
And you just finished a session, and in the
Yeah.
session you talked about your relationship with brands. Tell us what you do with brands. I mean, maybe go a bit more into the Foot Asylum example.
So with brands, what we do with them, we allow them to have access and to communicate with the audience that we have access to, and the audience that like our tone of voice, and the audience that understand our tone of voice. We pride ourselves of creating authentic content that will get the audience that we serve to engage with the brands that we work with.
So you made kind of a comedy show with Foot Asylum, didn't you?
We've made, off the top of my head, at least 10 to 12 original shows with them.
and had obviously had a massive effect on their business, in terms of their engagement with their own audience.
100%. I mean, when we started working together, which is a testament to the relationship, when we started working together, they were on like about 6,000 subscribers, which I think that's around 2018. And now we're in a position where, they're on about 2.1 million subscribers now over a course of 3 years, and that's a lot.
Incredible, yeah. So you talked in the session as well about format. So expand on that point a bit. What did you mean when you were talking about the importance of format?
So the importance of formats for us is when you create a show, you need to have your why. So why are you even doing it? And as a viewer, why am I even watching this? And then the format through, like, all the different format beats and what you're going to watch, you need to have this, a good pace around them. Need to be engagement, and it needs to have that arc, that emotional arc that takes the viewer through those emotions and keeps them engaged. So, for example, if I'm to do a dating show, it's like, okay, what's the jeopardy? Why is this person even on this dating show? Just shooting two people trying to date is not as engaging as a well-formatted, like it Does This Shoe Fit format, where the purpose of that was, okay, let's bring out what people speak about in their private group chats or after a date to a date, and then watch it play along. So that is part of a key format of that. So it's making sure that whatever you're putting out and whatever you're making is formatted well, is engaging, it's got good pace, and it's true and authentic to the talent you're using and the audience you're trying to communicate to.
Yeah, you were really clear during the session on the importance of audience, listening to audience, and you talked about being obsessed with feedback, which I thought was a really interesting point.
Yeah.
But very briefly, you dropped in the word educate, just in passing, and I'm just wondering, how do you apply messaging to your audience? Are there themes that you want to get across, values that you hold?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So on all the shows that we do, they come from a place of experience and relatability with the audience, and then in that way we then introduce them to a new way of thinking, or a suggested new way of thinking, or make them aware of a certain message that we're trying to put across. So it's always, everything that we do always has an undertone, and the undertone, as much as there's joy, as much as there is excitement in everything that we're doing, we have to make sure that we leave a digital footprint that's got positive messaging, or is communicating whatever the social issues that we're trying to communicate. But it's always done in a very engaging way, and it's always done in a way that it's palatable to the audience that we're speaking to.
Yeah. I read a story about you guys heading for Hollywood, and you talked
100%.
about feature films and TV.
Yes,
Tell us about old media. How will you, as a digital-first company, go into old media? What's the key, do you think?
The key is formats, the key is ideas, the key is engagement. Like along the way, so the way I look at it, right, I treat our business and the relationship with our audiences as a train or a bus, right? We have a final destination, and along the way, we're going to pick up passengers and we're going to drop some off along the way.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure that this train is packed before I get to the final destination. And, you know, I live in Kent and I live in Ashford. If I jump on the train at Ashford, for me, that train didn't come from Ashford, it came from Dover, right? It's people from Dover, people that would have loved us from Man Them on the Wall, and people that are picking up from Ashford are people that would love us from Does a Shoe Fair or Chef Asylum, or the stuff we're doing at BOT, which is Nella's Love Lessons, or the stuff we've done with Nella Rose, stuff we've done with Harry Pinero, they would have loved us from that. And then the people that are now at Stratford are people that love us from the stuff we do at Channel 4. But the end game is to get to King's Cross. So by the time we get to King's Cross, we've managed to pick up audiences along the way, and we've managed to educate, we've managed to communicate, relate with all these audiences along the way. And then, that is why that is really important. And that's for us, that's how we've managed to head that way into old media. So what we bring is this train that's full to this final destination.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
TV talks a lot about DEI, diversity, and its ambitions to get better at that.
Yeah.
But it seems to me social's probably better at DEI. What's
100%.
What's your feeling? Why do you think that is?
Because in social, we're not trying to shoehorn people into a box. So with TV, you need to speak a certain way, look a certain way, dress a certain way. You know, the lighting needs to be a certain way. Everything needs to be a certain way. But with social, it's very much like, come be yourself, and then we build a format around who you are. We don't try to put you in a format that we think works, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. A lot of sense. You contributed a lot in the session, some really interesting stuff. In terms of what the other guys said, was there anything that resonated with you? Any kind of themes from the session that you picked out that you thought were interesting? I
thought pretty much, to be honest with you, I thought everybody had really interesting bites. And, you know, we're from the same world, so we kind of live and breathe this kind of the similar messaging. I think Josh was very interesting to kind of have a creator that's gone through that journey and is now at a point where he's from his own YouTube channel to his own production company, which is pretty much the journey that we've been on, but from the people behind the scenes, not the actual creators as the talent in front of the screen. So that was really interesting to hear his journey and how he got that far. Yeah, I felt like pretty much like, you know, Tom from Lads, you know, when he gave his analogy about, you know, everyone used to have, you know, square pieces that go into that fits into a square box. Now we need to create. Analogy. Now we need to create Play-Doh so that it fits into every shape. Yeah. And for me, that's like that really emphasized and almost summarized our thinking. Which is amazing. Yeah.
You're behind the scenes, aren't you? You're a producer. So just quickly name check your partners. So who is in Wall of Entertainment with you?
I've got two business partners in Javan Wade and Priscilla Ascot, who are actors. So Javan is now based in LA.
Okay.
So he's, you know, just finished playing Cyborg in Doom Patrol.
Okay.
Priscilla has just had his feature on Netflix, I Came By, which did really well and was trending very well. So he was one of the leads in I Came By. So yeah, those are my two business partners that will run the business together. But of course, there is 23 other employees that we have. You know, 25 now actually. Yeah, 25 other employees that we have.
And where's the office? Where are you based?
So we're based in Liverpool Street.
Okay.
Yeah, we're based in Liverpool Street. Just got into a new office actually. Office that really shows ambition.
Yeah.
It's a 40 people office.
Okay.
We're currently on 25 and we believe we'll be a 40 by this time next year. So instead of then trying to move again, we just thought
expand into the space.
Expand into the space, exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, mate. Well, it was lovely to talk to you.
Pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much.
I'm with Danny Robbins, the creator of the Battersea Poltergeist, amongst other things. Hi, Danny. Good to meet you.
Hello.
Why don't you tell us, first of all, just how did you become a podcaster? What was the journey that brought you to this world?
Well, I've been making audio for a long time. I was an audio maker before I was a podcast maker. Written comedy, and I'd made documentaries and all sorts. And then I basically have always been obsessed with ghosts ever since I was a kid. And I wanted to make this podcast about a ghost story that came to me. It was the Battersea Poltergeist. It was this real-life haunting in the 1950s. And I just felt like it was an incredible story to tell, and it felt totally right to tell it through audio, and we ended up using drama and documentary to bring it to life. And I guess that was the point where I really realized I was making a podcast rather than just an audio program, because it was the first thing I'd made that really had a huge community of listeners build around it. And we had this amazing relationship where it was a two-way street, where people were getting so involved that they would start doing this detective work into the case, and they'd send me things. And I think it did what podcasts can do brilliantly, which is build a kind of club around them, in a sense that that the people listening are not just spectators but participants, and I think I love that aspect of podcasting. I think it is very empowering, and it's what makes people want to go away and tell other people about the podcast because they feel invested in it.
So that's an interesting point, because I think you referenced that in the session, and some types of creatives, they're quite isolated, aren't they? They don't necessarily want that kind of input, but it's interesting that podcast is much more like social media and much more dynamic relationship with audience, isn't it? And how would they feed back? I mean, what would they kind of give you ideas, extra information? How would it work?
We have really used Twitter a lot, and we do these things which we've called listen-alongs, which is where everybody gets together on Twitter on a certain night and presses play at exactly 9 p.m. and listens to the latest episode of the show and comments along with it. And so that's been amazing, and that ended up trending at number 2 in the UK, and really kind of built a huge following for the show, I think. Mainly on Twitter, but also on Facebook and a bit on Instagram, just kind of exchanging ideas about the case. We've made these ghost stories feel like true crime cases. People get involved as detectives. It came out of lockdown. It came out of the pandemic. It was a point in our lives where all of us, even if we were with our families, felt lonely. We missed our friends. And there was an ability for a podcast to become your friend. And I think it's something that quite a lot of people say to me. They say that I feel like their friend when they're listening to it. And I love that. And I think, that's my proudest achievement throughout all of this, that people have that kind of relationship with me and with the show. It was definitely a case of right place, right time. I think that people responded to the fact I was talking about a ghost story where a family were cooped up in their house, scared, because we were all cooped up in our houses scared during lockdown. And I think just people were hungry for entertainment. And I think you can see the boom in podcasts has been directly linked to the pandemic, really, that hunger for entertainment, that people just couldn't get enough. Where was the next true crime podcast? Where was the next thing delivering you that story that made you want to binge it, that got you hooked? So I think, if you're a podcast maker and you were able to seize that moment, then I think that was incredibly exciting times. That felt like kind of gold rush times.
Do you think your inherent interest in the supernatural elevated the podcast as well? I mean, I'm just wondering whether you can imagine some people thinking, I want to make a podcast, going and looking at 20 different areas and trying to pursue the market. But do you think that the fact that it was a subject that already appealed to you lent an extra authenticity or energy to the process?
I think so, because I think, if you were to ask people what is the difference between audio and podcasting, I think one of the main things that I would define as being a podcast thing is that they are incredibly personal stories. You connect with a person, you connect with a story, but you also really connect with the storyteller, and you invest your time in them. You like them and you want to go on this journey with them. And it is mostly because they know what they're talking about. They care about what they're talking about. They're invested in that story. So yes, absolutely. I think that people smell bullshit very quickly. I think they detect authenticity really quickly. And I think if you just bus a celebrity in to tell a story, it's never going to have the connection and the rapport and that ability to build a community that somebody who really cares about that story will have. All of us probably talk about and look back to Serial, and the Sarah Koenig, who made that show, was so invested in that case. She was a journalist who passionately believed in that case and wanted to get that story out into the world, and that's what we connected with. So I think that the personal is so important in podcasting.
You were very interesting in the panel on the subject of transferring a podcast to television. Go back over that process a little bit for us. So how was it when people started showing interest in taking it from one form to another?
Well, I went on this really exciting and bewildering and just dreamlike journey, really, where I was making this show in my shed in the bottom of my garden in Walthamstow. And then a few weeks later, I was fielding phone calls from Hollywood producers on a Sunday afternoon, trying to force me to sign with them rather than other people, and it was incredible. And, at the beginning, it was British production companies offering a few £1,000s to write a treatment on it. And at the end of it, it was, people talking about sort of potentially kind of life-changing amounts of money and very exciting, ambitious deals, really. And I think it caught everybody involved in it unaware. I think the BBC didn't expect it to happen. I didn't expect it to happen. I think nobody quite knew how to deal with it. I think that I felt like somebody who'd discovered this new and rare metal that, I didn't quite know what it was worth. I didn't quite know how to market it, and I didn't quite know how many people would want it, and very quickly, as the podcast started racking up bigger and bigger numbers and became number one drama podcast around the world, and we could see the kind of global impact of it, I think, all of us realized that we were onto something. And I think, the BBC didn't kind of seize the moment and hold on to it in the way that they should have. And I think, we talked about this in the panel, but I think, Katie Pollard from the BBC was there, and she's the first to admit that they've learned lessons from this, that actually things nurtured in the BBC as audio there should be a concerted effort to kind of hold on to them and make them for TV. But I think as soon as Hollywood got interested, it sort of priced the BBC out of the market. And, so I think they ultimately regretted telling me to go off and talk to interested parties and then come back to them, But it was a massive learning experience for everybody. And of course, your podcast being picked up by some big American company doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get made, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to get made the way you want it. So I think, you have to be careful, and it's not always the biggest offer that is the right offer for you. And I think you need to think about, over and above any offers that are made to you, how does this work for you as a creator? How are you going to be part of this thing as it goes forwards? Are you going to retain control, or are you going to find yourself sidelined and watch your thing morph into something that you didn't want it to be? So, for me, the doing the deal on it was over and above any kind of money I was offered. It was very much about, the role of me as a creator, and the people that we signed with Blumhouse were incredibly respectful and that made it very clear to me that I was at the center of it as a creator, and I loved that. That was great. And the kind of confidence that gives you as a program maker to feel you've reached an audience, but also you've reached people who really believe in you and want to invest in you is great.
Perfect call for someone who's a supernatural writer from Blumhouse.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was thrilling, absolutely thrilling. And it was something that I don't think you could engineer. And I think if you went out and set out on some journey to try and make it happen, it just so wouldn't work. And I think, now I'm in a situation where people come to me and pitch ideas to me and say, like, we've already got the TV series in mind. Would you mind making the audio and road testing it? And I think, it's a route. It could work, and I don't rule it out. But I do think audiences smell that kind of thing. I think if you go into it with the intention of just getting a TV series out of it, I think people will smell that, and I don't think they'll invest in it in the same way as if you build from the ground up. And I think, not every story suits TV either. There are things that should only be a podcast where, for whatever reason, you have maybe contributors who work better on audio. Maybe they need their anonymity. Maybe they're just people who come across much better in an audio format than on TV. So there's no golden rules to this. And, it's not as simple as saying you make a great podcast and it will be a great TV show. I think some things will translate, and often they will translate in a very different way. Often you'll make a great documentary series and somebody will come along and make a great drama series out of it. It's not necessarily that you just take the thing that was good on podcast form and translate that.
Would you say you've taken any learnings from the Battersea Poltergeist process of making a successful podcast, going through the kind of the TV process? Have you taken any learnings from that into your current work?
Each time you move onto a new stage, you grow as a storyteller, you grow as a program maker, you learn new techniques. I mean, I've learned a lot from working with American writer-producers, and that's definitely fed back into the kind of work I'm making. I guess you hone and sharpen your storytelling, and you also have maybe sort of a greater ambition in terms of the kind of scale of the story you're telling. But I think also you learn just from making series after series. You constantly think you've made the best thing you can ever make, and actually you're surprised by the next thing you make being even better, and it's because you've learned, and you learn from seeing how the audience respond to stuff as well. But for me, I guess the biggest thing it's given me is this confidence that it's all very well to be making stuff in your shed and feeling it's good yourself, but when an audience love it and connect with it in their millions, that's incredibly confidence boosting. And when you know that there are people in all different parts of the world and in America, and they're kind of believing in you as a storyteller and wanting to invest in that, then it's incredibly confidence-giving.
In the session, you made this point that a good podcast should be seen in the same way a novel is seen or a piece of TV series as a great piece of art in its own right, which I think I completely take on board. Having said that, could you imagine in 3 years' time Danny Robbins writing the screenplay or the script for Netflix for a TV series, a direct-to-TV series? That'd be something you're interested in, or do you think is podcast where your heart is?
Well, no, I mean, I am writing the script for the Battersea Poltergeist, so that is something I'm doing, and my play is on in the West End at the moment, 222, a ghost story as well. So, absolutely my ambitions lie in screenwriting and in taking the kind of stories that I tell in audio and making them work on screen. And thankfully, that is something that people seem interested in, Also, I think, there's great scope now to kind of grow a brand around a podcast. And, there's no way to not have that sound a bit sort of coarse and corporate and all that sort of thing. But people connect with these things. People love them, and people invest so much of their time in listening to podcasts. And so you can reach them in other ways. You can write the book, you can do the live tour, you can make the TV series, you can online content, you can have YouTube videos alongside the podcast. But, we're all addicts now. We're addicted at the very least to our mobile phones. We are incredibly obsessive in the way that we consume and devour content. We want to binge things. We will stay up till 3 a.m. motoring through 4 or 5 episodes of Downton Abbey. I'm basing that only on my wife. You can feed that as a program maker. You can feed that. You can work out different ways to tell the story, but it's got to be different ways. You can't just replicate your podcast and bang out a book that tells the same stories, or make a TV series that just rehashes the stories. I think your audience, if they're going to come with you, and you need them to come with you, because that ultimately is the biggest resource you have over and above the story. The fact that people care about the story and are interested in it and want to listen to it is real power. You've got to take them with you, so you've got to be offering them different things. I think each aspect of this should tell different parts of the story, and that's why sometimes adapting the podcast into a different genre, changing a documentary into a drama can be really good, because then you are offering people something genuinely different.
The session itself, did you enjoy that? Was it a good process for you?
I did. It was really nice. It's great to discuss these things, because I feel like we are in a Wild West time. It is like the gold rush, and nobody quite knows where it's going to go. And we're all making decisions that aren't based on precedent. I think podcasting has been around for a while, but the scale of podcasting, the appetite for podcasting has changed massively recently, and I do feel like the pandemic has driven that and accelerated that to a great degree, that people are so hungry for entertainment that podcasters had to really up their game and fill that gap in people's lives. So yeah, and certainly our experience has been really new and uncertain and uncharted, and it's interesting that the people that we felt should know what they were doing, in terms of people at the BBC, they're very honest, and they were like, we didn't know either, we didn't see it coming either, So I think talking about it is brilliant, discussing experiences, pooling experiences. I've talked to other people who've been in a similar boat and had people coming in with TV interest for their podcasts, and it's great to swap stories about that and to learn from that, and maybe you do things differently the next time around. Like now, I wouldn't say we're making any assumptions that anything I make now would go to television, but you do prepare for it. You decide to option a book if there's a book. You decide to option contributors in a certain way. You prepare for that, I think, that eventuality. And if it doesn't happen, fine. It's not a bad end product to have made an incredibly popular podcast. But if it has this life, then at least you know that you will be part of that journey. You've enshrined in it your control of the story.
Yeah, I thought that rights in, rights out point was really interesting, making sure that you do have that kind of, well, not control exactly, because it always comes back to that idea of exploitation, doesn't it? But that relationship with everybody who's involved in the process. So it's all harmonised.
I totally would say look after your contributors, because they ultimately are your IP, if you want to use that term. I think that podcasts have this incredible life that programs didn't have in the past. A documentary would go out and that was it, and that was the end of your relationship with the contributor. But now podcasts are around forever, and they may potentially go on this journey of becoming TV programs or books or live tours, all these kind of things that podcasts can do. So look after and respect the people who got you there, the people whose story you told, if it's a documentary. I think they're incredibly important, and they're probably going to go on a similar journey to you to some extent. Their journey will be an echo of yours, that they may find themselves having to sign deals with Hollywood or use American lawyers to negotiate life rights contracts. And it's going to be bewildering for them. So go on that journey together and look after them and make sure that they benefit from the success as well. It's easy to think that it's all about the way you tell the story, but of course the person at the heart of the story is so important.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Danny, and I hope you got to redecorate your shed.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm with Ash Greenwood from Pinterest, and we're at the Digital Content Forum. Nice to meet you, Ash.
Nice to meet you, Andy.
So tell me about Pinterest and video. You're on a platform today with Meta and Snap, and we know quite a lot about those guys in terms of what they do. But tell me why, what Pinterest is doing in the video world.
Sure. So I am kind of new to Pinterest, the platform. The Programming Originals team is a new team that's been set up solely to create and supplement the existing content that's on the platform in terms of video. So the idea is people come to Pinterest at the moment to find ideas, inspiration and how-tos for certain things they're looking to do in their lives. The idea with original content on Pinterest is that we will kind of enhance that offering that they already can access.
So drill down into that a little bit more. So what kind of things are you looking for and who are you looking to work with?
Sure. So we're looking for kind of everything really at this point. Obviously it's so new, so we're just really keen to kind of experiment with different formats and different forms. Primarily we'll be commissioning video pins, which are just really short form standalone videos. We'll also be looking at what we can do in the live space, as well as stills is really interesting for us, because obviously a lot of the pins on Pinterest are still images, so what can we do in that space to kind of enhance that. And also the live shopping is a really interesting focus for us. A lot of the time kind of live shopping on apps and social media sites is quite transactional. We want to find a way to make it more creative and more of an inspirational idea making exercise, as well as having the opportunity to buy the things at the end of it.
Yeah, so help me out with some of those areas. When I think of Pinterest and my attempts on Pinterest, it's always been stills based. Would you say the platform now thinks of itself more as a video first platform, or is it in transition? Where do you think it sits?
No, I don't think the focus is shifting at all. I think the role of us is to just complement what's already happening with all of our great creators on platform already. I think that the video offering is just another offering that Pinterest is kind of putting a focus on for this year.
Yeah. So I think you said in the session it's a relatively new team that was formed about 6 months ago. So tell us a little bit about the composition of that team. I think you mentioned who was in charge and so on. So what does the team consist of at the moment?
Yeah, so our global head of programming and originals is Nadine Zylstra. And within the kind of overall programming and originals team, there's a programming division who look after, I guess, the scheduling of everything. So at the moment they're putting together a really comprehensive calendar, moments and trends based on previous data. There's a really interesting thing that Pinterest do each year called Pinterest Predicts, whereby the data that we have is quite unique in terms of user data. Because people come to it as a kind of future planning destination, we can kind of see where the kind of patterns and increases are in certain search terms. So Pinterest Predicts is a report of those kind of trending things, which is really cool. And I think in 2021, 8 out of the 10 trends that they predicted actually came true, which is really cool.
Okay.
And I guess that presents a really interesting creative opportunity for us to be kind of ahead of the curve in that sense. So that's the programming team. They're responsible for the kind of overall themes and moments that we're going to be looking at. Then there's the originals team, which is the team that I'm in. Our goal is to be commissioning content with publishers and creators directly, as well as the kind of general indie industry.
Yeah, I know it's early days, but I mean, in terms of the kind of people that you're connecting with, I mean, if I think about my own TV background, Fremantle and Banerjee, those kind of guys. But as you say, there's influencers and creators in the digital world, and there are companies like Lad Bible and Future. Who do you see as being the obvious partners for you?
The most obvious would be, I guess, the publishers like you just mentioned, Lad Bible and Future, those kinds of places, because I think that they already kind of understand the way digital works. And I guess with this being, again, I keep saying, but it's such a new venture, I think it's important that we kind of are working with people that understand how digital works and the ways that our platform can work in that sense.
Yeah. What do you think a piece of original video might look like? You briefly referenced weddings, for example. So what do you think you might end up with?
Well, I think the formats are going to be kind of really different. I think there's not going to be one set thing that original content is. At the moment, the tool on platform is called idea pins. So essentially with idea pins, it's a pin that lives on the platform that you can save to your kind of inspiration board. And within that idea pin, you can add up to 10 photos or videos or a combination of the two. So essentially that's a really interesting tool for us, because that's where we can either post individual idea pins for each episode, or we can have a series in one pin that someone can save. It's all about kind of the experimentation of it all. This hasn't been done before on platform. We're just looking to see who are the partners that we can trust to help us deliver what our overall goal is.
Where is the team based? I mean, is it like a US based team with international satellites, or I mean, how does it operate?
Yeah, so I'm the only one in the UK at this point, which is nice. But yeah, most of the team are based in LA and San Francisco. That's where Pinterest's kind of main headquarters is. I have a counterpart in the US who looks after US and LATAM, and then I'm here in the UK looking after EMEA and APAC.
Okay.
So even though kind of our originals team at the moment is quite small in the grand scheme of the whole business, we are connecting with other parts of Pinterest that are already based in those places, like the editorial leads and the kind of the programming leads in those regions, so we can kind of cater to the different regions with the content we're making.
I've had the impression just for a little while that people are kind of interested in what Pinterest is up to. I mean, there was a rumour last year about PayPal maybe being interested in acquiring the platform, and it just seems that it's kind of growing in stature and is part of the next wave. Do you kind of find that you're involved in lots of conversations now? Are people interested in what you're up to?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think even just moving into this kind of space is a really interesting move for Pinterest. It makes sense. I think out of all of the platforms and the apps that we use on a day-to-day basis, I think Pinterest is maybe one that's kind of stuck to its original goal and not kind of swerved away or tried to kind of be something that it's not. And I think that's why people love it so much and want to kind of continue to use it. Yeah, it's a really interesting time, and to be coming into the business at this kind of period of like rapid growth, it feels really exciting. And to have, I guess, buy-in from all the different parts of the business into what we're trying to do is a really great place to be.
When I talk to people like Lad Bible or Future about the different platforms, they always talk about the importance of curating content for them, and it's got to be tailored, it's got to be appropriate. If you had to sort of summarise Pinterest as opposed to the other platforms, the distinctive qualities, what would you say is in the tone or the character or the personality of Pinterest?
Well, I would say Pinterest is more of a personal media platform than a social media, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, we want people to share their boards and share the inspiration they found, but ultimately it's a place where people can just be themselves and not have to worry about anyone looking at them or judging them or judging what they've maybe saved to their boards. And I think that's really special, and I think having that really positive kind of inclusive corner of the internet even, I think is really special. And I think that Pinterest have recognised that. They know where they stand, they know what lane they're in, and I think everything that they are kind of adding to it is kind of essentially enhancing the experience rather than trying to put loads of money into something that isn't really going to kind of land with the users.
And in terms of monetization, what is the idea behind adding video to the platform? Is that ultimately going to be more appealing to brands and advertising partners, do you think?
Well, I think there's going to be different ways that kind of the monetization will come into the original content play. And honestly, that's not something that is in my wheelhouse. I'm just solely focused on the creative at this point and kind of where the strategy lies. But there will be kind of different models that we'll be applying to the different projects that we're doing.
And in the session, it was interesting. I think you mentioned that your priority is under 1 minute, isn't it? That seems to be the really hot area at the moment, doesn't it? Very short form. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Currently, the tool, kind of, as I mentioned, it allows for those kind of multiple pins in one. 1 minute would be, I guess, the sweet spot for us. I think given that video is such a new concept to the Pinterest audience, we don't want to kind of throw a big 10-minute long pin on their homepage and expect them to watch it all. So I think 1 minute is the kind of the sweet spot for us at the moment, where we're kind of starting with that and seeing how it goes. And then I guess if we see an appetite or sense an appetite for a longer form thing, then we can look at that too.
You were on a really good panel with Lucy from Snap and Dan from Meta. Any themes that came out of that caught your attention that you found interesting?
Yeah, I think Dan's was really interesting in terms of the kind of step into the AR, VR world. That's so interesting. I mean, I'm not sure how that would ever play into Pinterest's strategy, as much as I would like it to.
For next year, maybe.
For next year, yeah. I think that's really interesting. And I think in terms of innovation and how digital content can kind of help supercharge that, I think that was a really interesting point from Dan.
So obviously you've gone through the torture of being on a panel, and now you've got the rest of the day. How do you want to spend the rest of the day? Is it going to be about networking?
Yeah, 100% networking. I mean, I think obviously I was at YouTube before this, so have quite a lot of relationships with lots of the indies in the UK. But I think now that I'm in this, I guess, more digital space, I'm keen to meet the people that would be potentially our partners in that and helping us to shape what's to come.
Cool. Thanks, Ash. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's all from the first TellyCast Digital Content Forum, sponsored by BBC Studios at the BFI South Bank in London. Thanks to our event partners, Pact, the Edinburgh TV Festival, After Party Studios, Content, Quinta Studios, Deadline and Raccoon, and to everyone who came along to the Sold Out show. We look forward to making 2023's edition even bigger and even better. TellyCast was edited by Ian Chambers and recorded in London. Next week's show is the last of the year and features Dr. Alex Connock, TV lecturer and author of Media Management and Artificial Intelligence, Understanding Media Business Models in the Digital Age. Until then, stay safe.